The first time I saw a human ship, my whole hive laughed through me at once, and the sound of it filled the bridge like water filling a drowning hold. I am Sail of the Sixth Chore, and I had been a note of the Vesh for 240 years when the scavengers came to the marrow belt. We are not one mind the way the soft species imagine it. We are a chorus. 10,000 throats singing one decision, and a million more behind them, and when the chorus is loud enough, the decision becomes truth, and the truth becomes the universe. That is what it is to be Vesh. You are never alone. You are never wrong, because wrongness is only a voice too quiet to be heard, and we drown the quiet voices. We had drowned them for 40,000 years. We had never once needed to learn the word for doubt. So when the human convoy limped out of the dark with its running lights flickering and its hulls patched in 7 mismatched alloys, the chorus did not deliberate, it mocked. Look at them. The Vesh sang through me. Look at the junk haulers. Look at the rust fleet. Look at the apes who came to pick over a graveyard because they could not build a graveyard of their own. The convoy was 9 ships. 9. We had 400 warsingers at the marrow belt that day, and each warsinger carried the souls of 1,000 Vesh, and the smallest of them could have swallowed all 9 human hulls and still had room in its belly for the wrecks they came to scavenge. I want you to understand the contempt, because the contempt is the whole story. The contempt is the thing I have carried for the rest of my life, which has been longer than I wanted and shorter than I deserved. The marrow belt was ours by right of singing. 40,000 years before, the Vesh had ended the Ossuer there. A rival chorus, an old enemy, a folk who had thought their armor thick and their numbers great. We had unmade 900 Ossuer dreadnoughts in a single afternoon of song, and we had left the wrecks where they fell as a monument to what it cost to be heard by us. The belt was a field of dead giants. Hulls the length of moons, drifting cold, their reactors long silent, their crews long dust. We sang over them once a generation, a low keening that meant, this is what we do to those who will not join the chorus. It was a holy place. It was a warning written in tonnage, and the humans came to loot it. We did not stop them at first. Why would we? You do not crush the insect that crawls across your monument. You let it crawl, and you tell your young to watch, so they will know that even the lowest things are permitted to look upon what the Vesh have done. The chorus decided in the space of a breath that the humans would be allowed to scavenge. They would haul off scrap. They would strip the dead Ossuer of their cold metal and their dead machines. And the whole galaxy, which listened to the Vesh the way prey listens to the wind, would see that the masters of the marrow belt were so secure, so vast, so utterly beyond challenge, that they let apes pick the bones of their kills. That was the first mistake. I sing it now so you will hear it land. We let them pick the bones. We watched them do it for 9 years. My station was the listening spire of the Warsinger choir without end, and my duty was to hold the convoy in my attention, to taste their transmissions, to map their hulls, to keep them sung into the great awareness of the chorus, so that no node would ever forget they were there. It was a low duty, a nursery duty. The young nodes rotated through it to learn patience, and I, 240 years old and tired of glory, had asked for it because I wanted quiet. I wanted to watch something small and harmless, do something small and harmless until my long life wound down to its end. For 9 years I watched them. The first thing I noticed was that they did not waste emotion. This is not praise. A drill does not waste emotion either, and a drill has no soul. The human tugs would clamp onto a dead Ossuer hull and cut it apart along seams I could not see, seams that no scan of mine could find, as though the humans knew the dead ship better than the ship had known itself. They took the cold metal. They took the dead machines. And here was the thing that itched at me. Here was the splinter I could not sing out. They took specific dead machines, not all of them, not the obvious ones. They would cut past a reactor core worth a fortune in any market the soft species kept, leave it floating, and instead haul away some scorched gray box from deep in a dead ship's spine, and they would do this again and again, ship after ship, year after year, with a patience that should have frightened me and did not, because I was Vesh, and the chorus had decided they were a joke, and you cannot be afraid of a joke. I sang my observations into the chorus. The chorus laughed them small. They are sorting our garbage for us, the Vesh sang. They are scavengers. Scavengers are particular. This is the nature of vermin. Sing of something interesting, Sail. And so I stopped singing of it. That is what it is to be a chorus. The loud voice is the true voice, and I let mine go quiet, and the quiet became forgetting, and the forgetting was a door I would have given my 240 years to close again before they opened it. 9 years. 300 Ossuer hulls stripped. The humans grew bolder in the small ways that vermin grow bold. They parked their 9 ships closer to our warsingers. They ran their lights brighter. Once one of their tugs passed so near the flank of choir without end that I could have counted the scorch marks on its plating if I had cared to, And I did not because it was a joke, and you do not count the teeth of a joke. I should have counted the teeth. In the 9th year, on a day the soft species would have called ordinary, a 10th ship came out of the dark to join the convoy. It was not a tug. It did not haul. It did not strip the dead. It came in slow and dark, and it took up station at the center of the 9, the way a heart takes up station at the center of a body, and it did nothing at all. It simply sat there among the salvage haulers, dark, patient, enormous in a way I did not let myself measure, and the chorus sang, "Ah, the apes have brought a bigger junk barge," and laughed, and turned its attention elsewhere. I was the node assigned to watch them. I sang the new ship into my attention. I tasted its transmissions and found none. I mapped its hull and found that I could not, that my scans slid off it the way water slides off oil. Stone, returning me a silhouette and nothing more, a shape with no inside, a hull that gave back no echo. I had never seen a hull a Vesh scan could not open. I sang this into the chorus. The chorus did not laugh this time. The chorus said, "Try again, Sail." I tried again. The same silhouette, the same nothing inside. A ship the length of one of our warsingers sitting dark among the scavengers, and when I reached for it with the full attention of the 6th choir, 10,000 throats focusing through me into a single needle of inquiry, the needle touched the hull and the hull touched back. I felt it the way you feel a hand close over your hand in the dark. Something inside that dark ship noticed that I had noticed it. And it did not flinch, and it did not sing, and it did not threaten. It simply held my attention there gently, the way you might hold a frightened thing still, and then it let me go. The whole exchange lasted less than a breath. When it was over, I was shaking on my spire, and 10,000 throats of the 6th choir were silent for the first time in my 240 years, and into that silence, very quietly, one young node sang the question that the chorus had never needed before. It sang, "What was that?" And no voice in all the Vesh could answer. The chorus did what choruses do with a question it cannot answer. It outvoted it. By the next watch cycle, the silence had been sung over. 10,000 throats decided together that I had imagined the touch, that an old node grown bored on a nursery duty had felt the ghost of his own attention bouncing back, that the dark ship was a junk barge with an unusually dense hull, that the silhouette with no inside was nothing more strange than thick plating around a hold full of scrap. The chorus sang at this, and the singing made it true, the way singing always made things true for us, and the young node who had asked what was that fell quiet and ashamed, and I let mine go quiet too, because that is what it is to be Vesh. But I did not stop watching the dark ship. A node cannot disobey the chorus. But a node can be assigned a duty and perform it with more care than the duty was meant to receive, and no voice will sing him down for diligence. So I watched, and I noticed. I noticed that the scavengers had changed their pattern. For 9 years, they had stripped the dead ossuary of those specific scorched gray boxes, and now, in the 9th year, with the dark ship sitting at their heart, they stopped hauling the boxes away. Instead, they began to carry them inward, to the dark ship. Tug after tug would clamp a gray box, drift it across the cold field of the marrow belt, and feed it into the dark ship's flank through a seam that opened and closed so fast my scans never caught it open. They had spent 9 years gathering, now they were assembling. I sang this into the chorus as a curiosity, framed small, the way you frame a thing you want heard without seeming to insist. The chorus tasted it. The chorus said, "They are consolidating their scrap for transport home. Reasonable. The apes will leave soon, their barge full, their 9 years of theft concluded, and the marrow belt will be ours alone again. Sing of their departure when it comes, Sail." It did not come. They did not leave. Instead, on the 401st day since the dark ship had arrived, every scorched gray box from 300 stripped ossuary hulls finished its journey into the dark ship's flank, and the seam closed for the last time, and the convoy went still. All 10 ships' lights dimmed. Tugs docked. Not a transmission, not a maneuver, not a flicker. The humans who had not wasted a motion in 9 years now made no motion at all. The chorus found this restful. See, it sang, the vermin sleep. The whole spectacle is ending. Even the apes know when they are beneath notice. I did not find it restful. I had spent 240 years learning the small grammar of living things, the way a thing breathes when it is calm, and the way it goes still when it is about to move, and I knew, in the part of me that was still my own and not yet the chorus's, that the human convoy had not gone to sleep, it had gone to readiness. The stillness of 9 ships and 1 dark heart was the stillness of a fist before it is thrown. I tried to sing this, the chorus would not hear it. And I understood then, the thing about the chorus that I had spent 2 centuries not understanding, the thing that being a node had kept me from ever seeing clearly. The chorus could not be afraid. Not because it was brave. Because fear is a quiet voice, and the chorus drowned quiet voices by its nature, and so the chorus had no organ for dread. 40,000 years of being right had burned the capacity for fear out of the Vesh entirely. We were a mind that could not flinch because we had unmade every part of ourselves that knew how. And I was a node of that mind, and I could feel the dread in my own small throat. And I could not make the chorus feel it, no matter how I sang. So I did the only thing a node can do that the chorus cannot stop. I kept the dark ship in my attention, alone with everything I had, and I waited to see what it would do, so that at least one voice in all the Vesh would be watching when it happened. It happened on the 402nd day. The dark ship spoke. Not to us, that is the part I have never been able to make the soft species. Understand, it did not hail us, it did not threaten us. It did not announce itself or demand our surrender or sing us any warning. It simply spoke on an open channel, in the trade tongue that the lesser species used among themselves, in a flat, unhurried voice that I have heard every night of my life since, and what it said was not aimed at the Vesh at all. It was aimed at the dead. It said, Oshawa Reclamation Line, this is the carrier hull long memory. We have your people, wake up. And then, across 300 stripped and gutted hulls in the cold field of the Marrow Belt, the dead Oshawa. Dreadnoughts we had unmade 40,000 years before, the monument to our power, the graveyard the humans had spent 9 years picking over, 300 ships lit up, not all of them. I want to be exact, because exactness is the only honesty I have left. 291 of the 300 Oshawa hulls lit their running lights in the same instant, a field of cold dead giants suddenly burning amber from the inside, and the chorus which had been resting came awake in one screaming chord that tore through me like a blade, because the chorus understood in that instant something I had understood 400 days too late. The humans had not been stealing scrap, they had been repairing the dead. For 9 years the Salvage Convoy had crept across the Marrow Belt, and the specific scorched gray boxes they had carried off, ship after ship, year after year, those were not loot. Those were the Oshawa dead. Each box held the singing core of a dead Oshawa crew. The lattice the rival chorus had used to bind its people into one mind the way we bound ours, scorched and silent and cold for 40,000 years, presumed dead by us because anything silent was dead to a chorus that could not imagine a quiet voice surviving. The humans had gathered 300 of them. They had carried them into the dark ship called Long Memory. And inside that hull, whose inside no Vesh scan could open, they had done something to those scorched gray boxes that the Vesh had believed could not be done. They had woken them up, the chorus screamed. 400 warsingers, 400,000 Vesh souls, screaming one note of understanding too late, and into that scream the flat human voice on the open channel said one more thing, still not to us. Still to the dead it had raised. Reclaimers, you've been waiting 40,000 years. Take your time. And the Marrow Belt, the graveyard, the monument, the holy field of dead giants that proved no one could stand against the song of the Vesh, the Marrow Belt began to move. You must understand what a dead Oshawa dreadnought is, to understand the field that was now waking around us. The Oshawa had been giants, where a Vesh warsinger is a spire of bone-white singing coral grown around a reactor, fast and cruel and no longer than a city. An Oshawa dreadnought was a mountain that had decided to sail. 40,000 years before, when our two choruses had met at this belt, the Oshawa had brought 900 of them, and we had unmade those 900 not because we were stronger ship for ship, we were not, but because we sang faster than they could think, because our chorus turned a fleet into a single will, and theirs turned a fleet into 900 arguments, and a will beats an argument every time. We had not destroyed their ships, we had drowned their song. We had reached into their singing cores and shouted them into silence, voice by voice, until 900 crews fell quiet at their stations. 900 mountains went cold and dark and drifted dead for 40,000 years while we sang our victory over their bones. We had left the hulls intact. That was the whole point. A wreck you blow apart is a battle. A wreck you leave whole, crew dead inside, drifting forever, that is a sermon. The Marrow Belt was our sermon, and the lesson of the sermon was, the Vesh do not destroy you. The Vesh silence you, and silence is forever. The humans had spent 9 years proving that silence was not forever. Silence was just a thing nobody had bothered to undo. The first Oshawa mountain that moved was nearest to choir without end, and I felt it through my spire before any scan reported it. The deep shudder of a reactor that had been cold for 40,000 years coming back to heat, a sound below sound, awaking. Its hull was scarred white with age and pocked with the holes where humans had cut their gray boxes free, and now those holes glowed amber from inside as the thing that had been opened its eyes. It did not lurch. It did not stagger like a thing newly raised. It turned, slow, sure, the turn of a mountain that has had 40,000 years to plan its first motion, and it brought its cold prow to bear on. The warsinger that had been singing over its corpse since before any living Vesh was born. The chorus did the only thing the chorus knew how to do. It sang. 10,000 throats of the sixth choir, 400,000 throats of all the Vesh at the marrow belt, reached out across the cold field and drove into the waking Ossuer the same chord we had used 40,000 years before. The silencing chord, the shout them quiet, the reaching in that had drowned 900 mountains in an afternoon. I felt the chord go out through me. I felt it strike the Ossuer's singing core, and the core sang back. I had no name for what came back along that chord, because nothing had ever sung back to the Vesh. We were the loud voice. We were the truth that drowned the quiet. But the Ossuer core that the humans had repaired was not the core we had silenced 40,000 years before. The humans had been into it. The humans had spent 9 years with their hands inside the singing lattice of the Ossuer dead, and whatever the humans had done, the core that sang back at us now was harder than ours, colder than ours, and it did not argue with our chord, and it did not drown beneath it. It simply held. 10,000 throats shouting silence at it, and it held the way the dark ship's hull had held my scan, the way a closed door holds against a fist, and then gently, the way the dark ship had let me go, it pushed our chord back out of itself, closed. We could not silence it. For the first time in 40,000 years, the Vesh sang the silencing chord and a thing refused to go quiet. We tried it harder. That was the chorus's instinct, the only instinct it had. If the voice does not work, be louder. 10,000 throats became 50,000, became 100,000. Every nearby warsinger lending its choir to the single needle of the silencing chord, the loudest the Vesh had sung at one target in 9,000 years, a note that in the old days would have stilled a whole Ossuer squadron between heartbeats. We drove it into that one waking core with everything 4 choirs could give, and I felt the core take the note the way a deep keel takes a wave, felt it accept the full weight of the loudest thing the Vesh could make, and hold, and not even strain. The humans had not merely made the core deaf to us, they had made it so that our loudest was, to the thing they had rebuilt, a sound it could choose whether or not to hear. And it chose not to. It simply went on waking, indifferent to the 100,000 throats screaming silence at it, the way you go on waking indifferent to a fly at the window, and somewhere in that indifference the chorus first tasted the thing it would spend the next 40 minutes drowning in, the understanding that loudness, the one power the Vesh had ever had just been revealed as a thing the humans could switch off in their enemies like a light. The chorus did not understand. I felt the chorus not understand, 400,000 throats hitting the wall of a thing they had no concept for, a thing that should not exist, a category with no entry in the long song of what is. We had a song for every enemy. We had no song for an enemy that would not stop singing. And while the chorus reeled, while 400,000 throats clawed for a note that did not exist, the woken Ossuer mountain finished its slow turn and opened a port in its scarred white flank that had been dark for 40,000 years, and fired. I do not have the words for the Ossuer's weapon. We never learned them, 40,000 years before, because 40,000 years before we had silenced their crews before they could fire, won the battle in the song realm where we were masters and never had to face the iron. We had unmade 900 Ossuer without once tasting what those mountains could do when their guns were allowed to speak. So when the Woken Mountain fired on choir without end, it was the first time in the history of the Vesh that we learned what we had actually been, fighting 40,000 years ago, and what we had only beaten because we cheated. The Warsinger choir without end was a spire of bone-white coral as long as a city and home to 10,000 of my kind. The Ossuer weapon took it in the flank, and the flank was simply gone, not blown apart, not cracked, gone. A section the size of a district erased between one breath and the next, and the rest of the Warsinger folded around the wound and came apart, coral shattering into a billion white shards. 10,000 throats of the 6th choir cut off mid-scream so abruptly that I felt the chorus's awareness lurch as a tenth of itself simply stopped. I lived because I was a node on the listening spire at the far end of the hull, and the far end was the last to die. And in the seconds it took for death to travel the length of my Warsinger, I was thrown clear in a coffin of coral into the cold of the marrow belt, alive, watching, alone in my own skull for the first time in 240 years as the chorus's voice guttered in me like a flame in a failing lamp. And from my coffin of coral, drifting, I watched the rest of them wake. 290 Ossuer mountains all at once, the whole graveyard, the whole sermon, 40,000 years of dead giants opening their amber eyes in the same minute, turning their cold prows on the 400 warsingers who had sung over their bones, and at the center of them, dark and patient and silent, the human carrier hull-long memory, which had not fired a shot, which would not fire a shot, which had spent 9 years building this and now simply sat at the heart of it and watched its work begin. The way I had watched, the way an old node watches a small thing do a small thing, except that the human ship was not surprised by what it saw, because the human ship had known. It had known for 9 years. It had crept into our holy place wearing the face of a joke, and it had spent 9 years with its hands inside our greatest victory, undoing it core by core. And the whole time the chorus had laughed and called them junk haulers and let them crawl across the monument because crushing them was beneath us. We let them pick the bones. And the bones, it turned out, had not finished with us, and the humans had simply been the ones patient enough to remind them. What followed, the soft species would call a battle. It was not a battle. A battle has two sides that both believe they can win. Only one side at the marrow belt believed that, and it was the wrong one, and it stopped believing it very fast. The chorus tried to fight the way it knew. It massed its remaining warsingers, 399 of them, after choir without end fell, into a single great voice, and it drove the silencing cord into the woken Ossuar altogether, all at once, 400,000 throats minus 10,000, the loudest the Vesh had been in 40,000 years. I felt it from my coffin of coral. I felt the whole chorus pour itself into one note, the note that had drowned 900 mountains, the note that was the Vesh. And I felt that note break against the Ossuar dead like surf against a cliff, and not one mountain went quiet. The humans had made them deaf to us. That was what I understood, drifting, dying slowly in my shard of dead warsinger. The gray boxes the humans had carried into long memory for 9 years. They had not just repaired the Ossuar singing cores. They had changed them, inoculated them. Whatever the humans had done inside that dark hull, the cores came back immune to the silencing cord, immune to the one weapon the Vesh had ever needed, and a Vesh stripped of the silencing cord was a chorus shouting at a wall. We had no guns worth the name. Why would we? We had never needed them. For 40,000 years our weapon had been our voice, and the humans had spent 9 years quietly making the dead deaf to our voice. And now 400 warsingers had nothing left to fight with but choral and song, and the song did nothing, and the choral could not stop a weapon that had erased districts in a breath. The Ossuar killed us the way we had once killed them, except slower, and on purpose, and with their guns. I watched a warsinger die every few seconds. The Ossuar did not rush. They had waited 40,000 years. They were not going to hurry now. They moved through our fleet in their slow mountain turns, bringing those flank ports to bear one at a time, and one at a time the warsingers came apart. A flank erased, a spire folded, 10,000 throats cut off mid-scream, again and again and again, and with each one I felt the chorus shrink, felt the great voice of the Vesh that had filled my skull for 2 centuries growing thinner, quieter, until for the first time I could hear the spaces between the throats, the silences where the dead had been, and I understood that the chorus was learning, in its last minutes, the thing it had burned out of itself 40,000 years ago. It was learning to be afraid. I heard it happen. I heard the chorus discover dread the way a man born blind might discover sight all at once. Too late, a flood of a thing it had no organ to contain. 400,000 throats that had never once flinched, flinching altogether. And the sound of it was the most terrible thing I have ever heard. More terrible than the Ossuar guns. More terrible than the silence of choir without end. The sound of a mind that had been certain for 40,000 years learning. In its final minutes, that certainty had been a thing the humans could take away. And through all of it, the dark ship did not fire. This is the part the soft species cannot believe when I tell them. The carrier hull long memory, the thing that had built this, the thing the chorus would have given anything to destroy in those final minutes, it took no part in the killing. It sat at the heart of the woken graveyard, dark and whole and patient, and it let the dead do their own work. It had not come to the marrow belt to fight us. It had come to introduce us to the people we had murdered, and then to stand back, the way you stand back from a thing you have set right, and let it finish. I have thought about that for the rest of my life. The humans could have brought their own guns. 9 years they spent in our holy place. In 9 years they could have built a fleet to shatter us themselves and taken the glory of it. They did not want the glory. They did not even want the fight. They had looked at the marrow belt, the graveyard, the monument the Vesh had built out of a murdered people, and they had not seen a place to win a battle. They had seen a wrong that had been sitting unanswered for 40,000 years, and they had simply, patiently, with their own hands, undone it, and then handed the answer to the people it belonged to and gotten out of the way. That is what they are. I did not know it then. I know it now. They are not conquerors. Conquerors I would have understood. The Vesh were conquerors. The humans are something the galaxy did not have a word for until they taught us one. They are the ones who remember. They go into the graveyards the old powers left as monuments to their own cruelty, and they read the names off the bones, and they do not forgive on the dead's behalf. Because forgiveness was never theirs to give, they simply wake the dead up and let them decide. The reclaimer line, the human voice had called the Ossuar dead. I learned later that this was not the humans' name for them. It was the name the humans had found written in the Ossuar cores when they opened them, the name the Ossuar had given themselves. 40,000 years ago, in the last seconds before our chorus drowned them, a vow scratched into their dying lattice that none of us had ever read because we did not listen to the quiet voices of the dying. We will be reclaimed. The Ossuar had promised it to themselves with their last breath, and then the dark had taken them, and the promise had drifted cold in the marrow belt for 40,000 years, waiting for someone patient enough to keep it. The humans had kept it. By the time the last warsinger died, the chorus was down to a handful of throats, scattered, broken, each one alone in its own skull for the first time, and I was one of them, drifting in my coffin of coral. The great voice in my head guttered down to almost nothing, hearing the few survivors of the Vesh calling to each other across the cold field, and voices that had finally, far too late, learned how to be afraid. When the chorus understood that it could not silence the Ossuar, it did the second thing the Vesh had always been able to do. It called for more. We were a chorus that spanned 100 singing worlds. 400 warsingers at the Moreau Belt was a picket, a garrison, an honor guard for a holy place. Nothing against the true voice of the Vesh, which could mass 10,000 hulls in a season if a chorus called the great chord across the dark, and the chorus called it. I felt the call go out from my coffin of coral, the deep summoning note that reaches between the stars, the note that says to every Vesh on every world, "Come, the loud voice needs you. Come and be the loudest thing the galaxy has ever heard." It had not been sung in 9,000 years. There had been nothing worth singing it for. The Vesh sang it now, and I felt it leave the marrow belt and race outward toward 100 worlds, and for one moment, one cold moment in my dying shard of warsinger, I let myself believe that this would be enough, that the great voice of the whole Vesh, every throat on every world, would come and drown even the deaf dead, would prove that the chorus was still the truth the universe bent to. The dark ship answered the summoning note, not with a weapon, with another voice. I had thought the carrier whole long memory was silent because it had nothing to say. I was wrong, the way I had been wrong about everything that mattered. The human ship had been silent the way a hunter is silent, by choice, until the moment choice ended. And in the instant, the chorus flung its summoning note toward 100 worlds. The human ship opened a channel I had not known it carried, a channel that did not speak in song or in the trade tongue, and it sent its own note out into the dark behind ours, writing our summons faster than our summons, and the human note was not a call for help. It was a recording. The humans had been listening to the marrow belt for 9 years. Of course they had. They had tasted every chord the chorus sang over the bones, every generation's keening, every holy note of this is what we do to those who will not join us, and they had kept it. They had kept all of it, the whole 40,000-year sermon, the recorded voice of the Vesh gloating over a graveyard, and now they flung it out into the dark behind our summoning note, to the same 100 worlds ahead of our call for aid, so that every chorus the Vesh begged for help would hear, before the begging ever reached them, the exact sound of what the Vesh had done at the marrow belt and had been proud of for 40,000 years. I do not know what the 100 worlds made of it. I was dying in my coral and could not taste their answer, but no warsingers came, not one. The great voice of the whole Vesh, summoned across the dark with the oldest and most desperate note we had, and the dark sent nothing back, and I have spent the rest of my life imagining the 100 worlds hearing their own gloating played back to them an instant before the cry for help, arrived and deciding, quietly in the way choruses decide, that a garrison foolish enough to be caught was a garrison not worth dying beside. The chorus had taught the galaxy that the Vesh do not rescue the silenced. The humans simply reminded the Vesh of their own teaching, in the Vesh's own voice at the one moment the Vesh needed it untrue. So no help came and the killing went on, and I learned a thing about the human ship that I have never been able to stop knowing. It was not cruel. Cruelty would have been a comfort. Cruelty I could have hated cleanly. The human ship was not cruel. It was thorough. It had thought of the summoning note before the chorus thought of it. It had prepared the answer to our call for aid before we knew we would need to call. 9 years it had watched, and in 9 years it had built an answer to every move the chorus had left, so that when the killing came there was nowhere for the Vesh to turn that the humans had not already, patiently, quietly closed. We had been a chorus playing a game we had never lost in 40,000 years, and we discovered, in the space of an afternoon, that we had been playing it against an opponent who had read every move we could make off the bones of the last people we beat and had simply been waiting for us to make them. The Ossuar killed another warsinger while the dark ship closed the door behind our summons. I felt it go, a spire near the edge of the field, 10,000 throats, a flank erased and the rest folding into shards. 398 warsingers left then. The chorus, what was left of it, did not mass for another silencing chord. It had learned finally that the chord did nothing. Instead, the chorus did a thing that had no name in all our long song, a thing the Vesh had never once done in 40,000 years of being the loudest voice in the dark. It begged. I felt the begging start in the younger warsingers, the ones with the most throats still alive, and it spread through what was left of the chorus like cold through water. The great voice of the Vesh, the truth the universe bent to, broke apart into 10,000 small voices, all crying the same small thing across the open channel toward the dark ship and the woken dead. Stop. We yield. We did not know. We are sorry. Stop. 40,000 years of certainty, and at the end of it, the chorus had nothing left in its mouth but the quiet voice it had spent its whole existence drowning. And now that voice was all of us, all at once, begging the dead and the humans for the mercy we had never once given anyone. The dark ship did not answer the begging. The Ossuar did not answer the begging. They had not woken to negotiate. They had woken to be reclaimed, and reclamation does not pause for the regret of the one who left you in the ground. The grief song that would come later, the mourning, the long sad chord, that was for the Ossuar themselves, for their own 40,000-year dead world. It was not for us. We did not merit a song. We merited only the slow turn of the mountains and the patient erasure of our throats, one warsinger every few seconds while we begged, and the begging changed nothing, because by the time a chorus learns to beg, it has already taught the galaxy that begging is for the weak, and the galaxy has believed it. And now there is no one left who remembers how to grant mercy to the Vesh. There was a moment, somewhere in the 20th minute, when the chorus tried the one thing it had never in 40,000 years had to try. It tried to fight with its body. A wedge of 40 warsingers, the heaviest hulls left, the ones grown thickest with coral, the flagships of 4 separate choirs, abandoned the silencing cord entirely and drove their physical mass at a single Ossuar mountain, all 40 of them at once, to bury it under tonnage the way a tide buries a stone. It was a desperate thing, and it was, I think, the first genuinely brave thing the Vesh had ever done, because it required us to admit that the song had failed and that we were down to the crude business of ramming, the business of the lesser species, the business we had spent 40,000 years being too good for. 40 warsingers, a quarter of everything left alive, threw themselves at one waking mountain. The mountain did not maneuver. It did not need to. It opened 3 flank ports along the axis of our charge, and it spoke its silent speech 3 times. And the leading wedge of our assault, 11 warsingers, 110,000 throats, simply was not there anymore, erased mid-charge, and the rest of the wedge flew on through the gap where their own vanguard had been, and struck the mountain's scarred white flank and broke against it, coral against ancient iron. I felt the warsingers come apart on impact, spires folding, hulls crumpling, 10,000 throats and 10,000 throats and 10,000 throats. And when the dust of shattered coral cleared the Ossuar mountain was still there, still turning, a long pale scrape down its flank where 40 warsingers had spent themselves, and from that scrape there came, and this is the thing I have never been able to stop hearing, a sound that I realized slowly was the Ossuar crew inside, the woken dead, registering the impact and finding it beneath their notice. Not a war cry. Not even acknowledgement. The sound a working thing makes when something small strikes it and it keeps working. We had thrown a quarter of our living strength at one of 290 mountains, and the mountain had not so much as broken stride, and the dead inside it had not bothered to sing about it. That was when the last of the chorus's hope went out. Not when the song failed. The song failing was a thing too large to grasp all at once. It was the small thing, the scrape on the flank, the dead not bothering to notice, that finished us. You can survive being beaten by something greater than you. It is being beneath the notice of the thing that is killing you that breaks the spine of a proud people, and the Vesh had spent 40,000 years making other peoples feel exactly that, and now we felt it, and there was no chorus loud enough to sing it away. I have not yet told you the truth about the dark ship's size, and I have been avoiding it, the way you avoid a thing you do not want to have seen. When the human carrier hull long memory first came to the marrow belt, my scans had returned me a silhouette and nothing more, a hull the length of one of our warsingers, dark, dense, sealed. I had reported it as such to the chorus, and the chorus had filed it as a junk barge, and I had let it. But a scan that cannot open a hull cannot measure it either. It can only give you the outline of the thing the hull wants you to see, and the human ship had wanted us to see a barge, and so we had seen a barge for 401 days. It was not a barge. When the killing was at its worst, when the Ossuar were moving through our fleet like a slow tide, and the warsingers were folding into shards every few seconds, the dark ship at the heart of the woken dead finally let its outer hull go dark, not powered down but unmasked, the way a thing drops a cloak it no longer needs. And for the first time in 402 days, a Vesh scan saw what the humans had actually parked in our holy place. The carrier hull long memory was not the length of a warsinger. It was longer than 9 of them laid end to end. It had hidden the rest of itself in a fold of its own hull, a trick of geometry I did not have the singing to understand, presenting us a barge-sized silhouette, while the true bulk of it lay sleeved inside a darkness our scans read as empty space. 9 warsingers worth of human ship, sitting at the heart of our fleet for 402 days, and the chorus had laughed at it and called it a junk barge. And the joke, I understand this now, drifting, dying, the joke had been the whole point. The humans had not hidden their ship to ambush us. They had hidden their ship so that we would mock it. They wanted the chorus to laugh. They wanted 40,000 years of certainty to look at the thing that would end it and call it vermin, because a chorus that mocks does not prepare, and a chorus that does not prepare is a chorus that can be undone by patience alone. And the hull, when it finally showed itself, was a thing I will see behind my eyes until I die. The soft species build ships that try to be beautiful, or try to be frightening, and you can see the trying in every line. The human hull was neither. It was weathered gray, scorched and pitted along every plane, mismatched where it had been patched 100 times across what must have been centuries of use, a working hull, a hull that had been somewhere and done something and come back and gone out again more times than the records of any soft species could hold. It did not pose, it did not threaten, it simply was vast and battered and patient, and the being of it was worse than any threat, because a threat is a thing a ship makes, and a being is a thing a ship cannot help, and the human ships being said, without a single weapon fired, "We have done this before, and we will do it again, and you are not the first graveyard, and you will not be the last." It carried no guns that I could find. I looked. In those last minutes I turned every scan I had left across the unmasked hull of long memory, searching for the weapons that would explain it, and there were none. 9 warsingers worth of human ship, and not one gun port, not one missile rack, not one lance. It had not come to fight, it had come to carry. It was a carrier hull, exactly as it had named itself, and what it carried was not soldiers and not weapons but workshops. 9 years of workshops. The hands and tools and patient machines the humans had used to repair 300 dead Ossuar cores. And the realization of that, drifting in my coral, was the thing that finally broke whatever was left of my pride. The humans had not built a warship to destroy the Vesh. They had built a repair shop and crewed it with menders and parked it in our graveyard and let the dead do the killing. The most powerful thing in the Marrow Belt that day was not armed. It fixed things. It had spent 9 years fixing the broken people we had left for dead, and the fixing was the weapon. And there was no defense against it, because there is no defense in all the songs of the Vesh against a thing that wants only to repair what you tried to destroy. The Ossuar took another warsinger, 390 now, then another, while I watched the unmasked hull and understood it. 389. I want to be exact about the speed, because the speed is the part the soft species refuse to believe. The whole killing, 400 warsingers, 400,000 throats of the Vesh, the garrison of our holiest place, took the Ossuar 41 minutes from the moment the first mountain woke to the moment the last warsinger fell. 41 minutes to undo a victory 40,000 years old. The chorus had spent an afternoon silencing 900 Ossuar mountains 40,000 years before and had thought itself swift. The humans had handed those mountains back their guns and their hearing, and the mountains had returned the favor in less than the time it takes a Vesh choir to sing a single generation's keening over the bones. And through all 41 minutes, the human carrier hull did not fire, did not maneuver, did not so much as drift from its station at the heart of the dead. It hung there, unmasked, vast, patient, the warm amber of its window arrays glowing across 9 warsingers worth of weathered hull, and it watched. The way I had watched, 2 centuries on a nursery duty, an old node watching a small thing. Except that the human ship was not bored, and the human ship was not waiting for its long life to wind down. The human ship was simply present at the keeping of a promise, the way you are present at a thing you have spent 9 years making sure would come to pass. And there is no word in the Song of the Vesh for the patience of a thing that watches its own work finish without needing to take a single hand in it. In the 34th minute, with perhaps 40 warsingers left alive and the chorus a thin broken thing crying across the open channel, one of the surviving warsingers tried to run. It was the warsinger thousand-throated Dawn, and it carried what was left of the second choir, and it had been holding at the far edge of the field where the Ossuar had not yet reached. And when its commanding nodes understood, finally, that no help was coming and no cord would silence the dead and no begging would stay their guns, they did the thing the Vesh had never done in 40,000 years. They turned to flee. They lit their long engines, and they aimed thousand-throated Dawn at the open dark beyond the Marrow Belt, and they ran. I want to tell you that the human ship let them go. I want to tell you that, because it would be a kinder thing to carry. But the human ship had not come to be kind, it had come to be exact. And the moment thousand-throated dawn broke for the open dark, the carrier hull-long memory spoke for the first time since it had unmasked, in the same flat, unhurried trade tongue, not to the fleeing warsinger but to the dead. Reclaimers, one's running, he sang over you for 200 years, your call. And the Ossuar, who had not chased a single Vesh, who had stood and let us come to them, who had killed only what came within reach. Two of the nearest mountains turned from the slaughter and lit engines that had been cold for 40,000 years, and they went after thousand-throated dawn into the open dark, slow at first and then not slow, mountains moving faster than mountains have any right to move, and they caught it. Of course they caught it. The Vesh had built warsingers to sing, not to run. Because a chorus that is the loudest voice in the dark never needs to run. We had no speed. We had never needed speed. The humans had known that, had read it off our own hulls in 9 years of watching, and the human ship had not needed to chase the runner itself, because it had already measured long before that the dead it carried were faster than anything the Vesh had ever built to flee in. They took thousand-throated dawn in the open dark, beyond the field, where there were no other dead to see it, and the warsinger's last cry came back to us across the channel, not words, just the sound a chorus makes when the last of its throats understands that there is no edge to the trap, that the humans closed the open dark itself 9 years ago by choosing a dead people who could outrun us, that there was never anywhere to go. 200 warsingers had thought the open dark was an escape. The humans had quietly made it a longer way to die. 38 warsingers then. The chorus had stopped begging. There is a point past which even begging fails, when a mind understands that the thing killing it does not want anything begging could offer, and the chorus reached that point in the 35th minute and went quiet, not silenced for once, but simply emptied of anything left to say. I felt the great voice that had filled my skull for 240 years thin down to a whisper, and then to less than a whisper, and I lay in my coffin of coral and listened to the Vesh stop being a chorus. It is a strange thing, to feel a mind you have been part of for 2 centuries come apart around you. The throats did not all die at once. The Ossuar were thorough but not quick, and there were 38 warsingers worth of dying still to do. But the chorus, the thing that made 10,000 throats into one, the chorus died before the throats did. It died when it ran out of certainty, and a chorus is nothing but certainty wearing a million voices, and when the certainty was gone, the voices were just voices, alone, each in its own skull, the way I had been alone since the first minute when Choir Without End fell and threw me clear. For the last 6 minutes of the marrow belt, the Vesh were not a chorus. They were 400,000 frightened individuals discovering, all at once and far too late, the thing every soft and singing species in the galaxy had always known and we had drowned out of ourselves 40,000 years ago. That you are alone, that you have always been alone, that the chorus was a thing you told yourself so you would not have to hear the quiet voice that knew you could die. I heard the quiet voices in those last 6 minutes, thousands of them across the broken field, each one alone, each one saying a different small thing into the dark, a name, a regret, a plea, a question, the one the young note had asked on the first day, and the chorus had drowned. What was that? They were still asking it as they died, one throat at a time. What was that? What was the dark ship? What were the humans? What undid us? And the human ship, which had answered the summoning note and answered the runner, did not answer the dying. It let them die with the question, because the question was the warning, and a warning answered is a warning that ends, and the humans did not want this one to end. They wanted it carried. They wanted every quiet dying voice of the Vesh to go out of the marrow belt, still asking what undid us, so that the asking would not stop when the dying did. That is why they spared the ones they spared. Not mercy, not even contempt. Memory. The humans spared a handful of broken nodes drifting in coffins of coral for the same reason they had left the Ossuar. Hulls, no, for the reason we had left the Ossuar hulls. The reason we had invented and been proud of for 40,000 years. A wreck you destroy is a battle. A witness you leave alive is a sermon. The humans had read our sermon off our own bones, and they preached it back to us with our own grammar, and they left me sail of the sixth chore, 240 years old, the last note of a dead choir, drifting in a shard of the first warsinger to fall. They left me alive to be the text of it. In the 39th minute, with 12 warsingers left and the chorus already dead inside the throats that still sang, the eldest node of the Vesh tried to speak to the human ship directly. His name was Oran of the first chore, and he was older than I was, older than the garrison, the senior voice of the marrow belt, the node who had stood watch over the graveyard the longest and sung the loudest in the keening of every generation. If any one of us had owned the certainty of the Vesh, it had been Oran. And in the 39th minute, Oren did the thing that certainty had never once allowed him to do. He opened a private channel to the carrier hull long memory, voice to voice, node to crew. And he spoke not as the chorus but as one dying old thing to another. And I heard it because the human ship answered on the open channel where all of us could hear. And I have wondered ever since whether that was mercy or whether that, too, was the warning being written. Orun said, "We did not know your dead still slept. We thought them gone. Had we known, we would never have." The human voice cut him off. Not unkindly. That was the worst of it. There was no anger in the human voice, not once, in any of it. It said you knew they slept. You named the place the marrow belt because the marrow is where the living part of the bone hides. You sang over them every generation so they would not be forgotten. You wanted to remember exactly what you'd done. We just read your own records back to you. And Arun, who had been the loudest voice of the Vesh for longer than my whole life, had no answer. I felt him reach for one across the channel, felt the old certainty grope for the note that would make this untrue, the way the chorus had always made things untrue by singing them loud enough, and the note was not there. The humans had taken it. Not by silencing him the way we silenced the Ossuar. The humans never silenced anything. They had simply spoken a truer thing first, and a truer thing first is the one weapon a chorus has no defense against. Because a chorus is built to win by being loudest, and the humans did not raise their voice at all. Orun tried once more. He offered the human ship everything the Vesh had. He offered the 100 singing worlds, the great voice, the secrets of the chord, the throats of every chorus that had ever drowned a quiet voice. He offered to make the humans the loudest thing in the galaxy if they would only call off the dead. It was the offer of a drowning thing, and there was no shame in it except that I heard, underneath it, the last working of the old contempt. Orun still believed, even dying, even begging, that the humans wanted what the Vesh wanted, that the dark ship had come for power, that everyone in the end wanted to be the loudest voice and could be bought with the promise of it. The human voice was quiet for a moment, and then it said the thing that I have repeated to 19 choruses and 4 councils, the thing that is the whole of the humans in one breath, the thing that finished Orun and finished the Vesh, and that I will say to you now exactly as it was said to me. We don't want to be loud. We've heard what loud does. We came to make it quiet again, the right kind. Then the channel closed, and one of the Ossuar mountains brought its cold prow to bear on Orun's warsinger, and Orun of the first chore, the eldest voice of the Vesh, the loudest throat of 40,000 years, died the way the Ossuar had died 40,000 years before, at his station mid-song, his last note cut off so clean that the silence after it had an edge. 11 warsingers then. I lay in my coral and I understood at last the full shape of the thing the humans had done, and it was bigger than the marrow belt, bigger than the Vesh, bigger than the 40,000 years. The humans had not come to win. Winning was a thing the loud voices did to each other, the Vesh over the Ossuar, the next chorus over the Vesh, an endless trading of graveyards, each conqueror building his monument on the bones of the last and singing over it until someone louder came along. The humans had stepped outside the whole game. They did not want the graveyard. They did not want to be the next loudest voice singing over our bones the way we had sung over the Ossuars. They wanted to empty the graveyard entirely, to wake the silence, to settle the debt, and then to leave, taking nothing, building no monument, singing no victory, so that the cycle that had turned for 40,000 years would have at this one belt, in this one afternoon, simply stopped. The right kind of quiet. That was the human phrase, and I have turned it over for years, and I think I finally understand it. The Vesh made the quiet of the silenced, the quiet of a voice shouted down, a thing that is still there, still suffering, still waiting, a quiet that is only a wound that is not finished. The humans made the other quiet, the quiet of a debt paid, a grief let bleed, a thing finished and set down. We had spent 40,000 years making the first kind of quiet and calling it victory. The humans came to the marrow belt and made the second kind, and the difference between the two is the difference between the Vesh and whatever the humans are, and I did not have a word for that difference before the humans came, and now I have a word for it. And the word is the warning, and the warning is the only thing I have left to give. In the 40th minute, one of the human tugs came for me. I saw it leave the carrier hull, a small thing, blunt and battered, the same kind of tug that had crawled across the dead Ossuar for 9 years, cutting gray boxes free. It crossed the broken field toward my coffin of coral, threading between the drifting shards of dead warsingers, between the cooling slag of 10,000 throats. And I lay there and waited to die, and I will tell you that I was not afraid, because I had nothing left to be afraid for. The chorus was gone. The sixth choir was gone. I was a single old node in a shard of the first ship to fall, and I had spent 240 years certain of everything, and I had been wrong about the one thing that mattered, and dying seemed a small correction to make. The tug did not kill me. It came in close, close enough that I could see, through a port in its blunt gray hull, the shape of a human at the controls. I had never seen one before. 9 years they had crawled across our graveyard, and I had never once bothered to look at the thing inside the suit. They were small. That was my first thought, the old contempt rising one last time out of habit. They were small, soft, fragile things, no chitin, no chorus, a single quiet voice rattling around in a single fragile skull, and we had let them pick our bones because crushing them was beneath us. They were small, and they had ended 40,000 years of the Vesh in 41 minutes, and not one of them had fired a shot. The human at the controls looked at me. I felt it look. Not a scan, not a chord, just the simple attention of one tired thing regarding another across the cold. And then it did a thing I have never been able to explain to any chorus or council I have told. A thing that has no place in the Song of Conquest. A thing that does not fit anywhere in the 40,000-year war of the loud voices. It raised one small hand and it touched the port of its tug, and it held the gesture there a moment, facing my coral, and then it turned the tug and went back toward the carrier hull and left me alive. I did not understand the gesture for a long time. I understand it now. It was not mercy and it was not contempt. It was the thing the humans do that the loud voices cannot. The thing that is the whole difference. The human had looked at the last note of a murdered choir, drifting in the wreck of his own ship, in the graveyard of a people his ship had just finished avenging, and the human had not gloated and had not pitied and had not even hated. The human had acknowledged me, one tired thing to another, as if to say, I see that you are there. I see that this is the worst day of your long life. I am not going to pretend you are nothing, the way you pretended we were nothing for 9 years. I am going to look at you, and then I am going to leave you alive to remember being looked at. That is the cruelest thing anyone has ever done to me, and it was done with an open hand, and I have not been free of it for a single day since. Because here is what the open hand did, it made me real. For 9 years the chorus had looked at the humans and seen vermin, a joke, junk haulers crawling across the monument, never once a people, never once a thing with a hand to raise. Because to see them as a people would have been to admit they could matter, and the chorus could not admit that anything mattered but itself. And in the 40th minute, with the chorus dead and the 6th choir dead, and 40,000 years of certainty drifting in shards across the cold, a single small human raised a single small hand and looked at me and saw a people. And I understood, in that gesture, the exact size of what we had been. We had spent 40,000 years unable to see anyone, and they had crossed our whole graveyard and looked each of us in the eye, the dead Ossuar and the dying Vesh alike, and seen everyone. That is the category error, not the ship size, not the speed. The error was that we thought we were the ones who could see, the loud voice, the truth the universe bent to, and we had been blind the whole time, blind in a way that has no cure, and the humans were the ones who could see, and they had been seeing us for 9 years while we laughed. The tug docked. The carrier hull's amber windows glowed steady. The killing went on a little longer. The Ossuar were thorough, and I lay in my coral and watched the last warsingers fall, and I did not look away because the human had not looked away from me, and I owed the dead at least the courage of a witness who keeps his eyes open. 7 warsingers, 70,000 throats perhaps, of all the 400,000 the Vesh had brought to the garrison of our holy place. They had stopped trying to fight. They had stopped trying to flee. They had stopped begging, and they had stopped offering, and Orun, the eldest, was dead, and the chorus that had bound them into one will was a memory in their skulls now, a phantom voice that kept reaching for a chord that no longer answered. They were not a chorus anymore. They were 7 ships full of frightened individuals, each one alone in a way the Vesh had not been alone in 40,000 years, and they did the only thing left to a thing that is alone and frightened and about to die. They sang to each other, not the great chord, not the silencing note, not the summoning note, not any of the songs of the chorus, just voices, small voices, reaching across the broken field from one doomed warsinger to another, saying the things that small voices say at the end. I am here. Are you there? I am afraid. I am still here. It was the first honest singing the Vesh had done in 40,000 years. It took the death of the chorus to free it. And it was the saddest sound I have ever heard, sadder even than the Ossuar grief that came after. Because the Ossuar at least were mourning a real thing, a world that had been alive and was lost, and the Vesh in those last minutes were mourning a thing that had never existed. The certainty, the chorus, the togetherness that had only ever been a way of drowning the truth that we were each as alone as everyone we had ever silenced. The Ossuar took the 7 one at a time. They did not hurry. I have said that, and I say it again, because it is the part that does not leave me. The patience of it, the dead matching the patience of the menders who woke them. No rage in the killing, no haste, just the slow, sure turning of mountains and the methodical erasure of the throats that had sung over their bones. A warsinger would die, a flank erased, a spire folding, and the small honest voices of the survivors would falter, and then steady, and go on singing to each other across the cold. I am here, are you there? Fewer each time, until there were only two. The last two warsingers were bright keening and deep below the note. And they had been built in the same season 9,000 years before, sister ships, and they died within a minute of each other in the 41st minute of the Marrow Belt. Bright Keening went first. An Ossuar mountain brought its prow around, and the flank port opened, and the district erasing weapon spoke its silent speech. And Bright Keening came apart. 10,000 throats cut off mid-song, and the last thing it sang, I heard it, I will always have heard it, was not a plea and not a curse. It was the name of its sister ship. Across the cold to the only other voice left in all the Vesh, Bright Keening sang deep below the note. Just the name, are you there? And then it was Shards. And deep below the note answered, I am here. The last warsinger of the Vesh, alone in the broken field, every other throat silenced. The chorus dead, the garrison dead, 40,000 years of certainty drifting in coral shards across the graveyard it had built. And the last thing the Vesh ever sang before the Ossuar Mountain finished its slow turn was a single small voice telling a sister ship that no longer existed, I am here. Then the flank port opened, and deep below the note was gone, and the Marrow Belt was silent. I do not have the words for that silence. I had lived 240 years inside the chorus, inside the great voice that never stopped, 10,000 throats and a million more behind them, a sound so constant I had never once in my long life heard its absence, and now it was absent, all of it. 400 warsingers, 400,000 throats, the whole garrison of the Vesh, and the great voice that had filled my skull since before I had a self of my own, gone in 41 minutes, leaving a silence so total that I could hear, for the first time, the small sound of my own single quiet voice rattling alone in my single skull, the voice the chorus had drowned every day of my life, the voice that had known, all along, the thing the chorus could not bear to know. You are alone. You have always been alone. The chorus was the lie you told so you would not have to hear me. I lay in my coffin of coral in the new silence, and I listened to my own quiet voice for the first time, and I did not drown it, because there was no chorus left to drown it with, and it told me the truth, and the truth was the warning. And I have been carrying the warning ever since. The Ossuar did not fire again. There was nothing left to fire on. 290 mountains, scarred white, amber-wounded, hung in the cold field among the shards of 400 dead warsingers, and the carrier hull long memory hung at their heart, vast and battered and patient, its amber windows glowing steady. And for a long moment, nothing in all the Marrow Belt moved or sang. The killing was finished. The debt 40,000 years old was paid. The graveyard the Vesh had built as a monument to our power had become, in 41 minutes, a monument to something else entirely, a thing the galaxy did not yet have a name for, a thing I would spend the rest of my life trying to name and would only ever be able to point at, the way you point at a thing too large to hold in a single word. And then the human voice came back on the open channel, flat and unhurried as it had been at the beginning, 402 days before, when it had spoken not to us but to the dead, wake up. And now, with the killing finished and the silence total and the last warsinger gone, it spoke again. And what it said was the question that began the real ending, the question that was somehow worse than all the killing. It said, Reclaimers, the dead are accounted for. Where do you want to go? I had expected the dead to scatter then, to hunt the rest of the Vesh across the galaxy. I had expected them to do what we would have done, to ride their revenge outward, to find every chorus and every nest and every singing world of the Vesh and silence us the way we had silenced them, to spend 40,000 years of patience in one great wave of unmaking. That is what the Vesh would have done with a wrong that old. That is what conquerors do. The Ossuar did not do that. The Ossuar gathered 290 mountains, scarred white with age, and pocked with the holes where the humans had cut them open, drew together in the center of the Marrow Belt around the dark ship that had woken them, and they went still. Not the killing stillness, not the fist before the throw, but a different stillness, one I had no name for. The human question still hung in the silence. Where do you want to go? And the Ossuar answered it. They answered not with guns, with song. A low chord, vast and slow and unbearably sad, rose from 290 mountains at once, and it was not a war song. I had spent 2 centuries inside a chorus. I knew the shape of every kind of singing the Vesh had, and the Ossuar were not singing any of them. They were singing the thing the Vesh had never once sung in 40,000 years. They were singing grief. I lay in my coffin of coral, and I listened to 290 dead mountains mourn a world that had been gone for 40,000 years. And I understood, finally, all the way down, the thing the chorus had never let me understand. We had not silenced the Ossuar 40,000 years ago. You cannot silence grief, you can only postpone it. We had postponed 290 mountains worth of mourning for 40,000 years, and the humans had come along and pressed the wound and let it finally bleed, and the sound of that bleeding was the most human thing in the whole cold field, and not one human throat made it. That is the part I carry. The humans built all of this, 9 years of patience, 300 cores repaired, an entire dead people raised, and at the end of it they wanted nothing for themselves, no tonnage, no glory, no revenge of their own. The wrong had not been done to them. They had simply found a grief that nobody had let bleed, and they had let it bleed, and then they asked the mourners where they wanted to go. When the grief song finally fell quiet, the human ship Long Memory powered its engines for the first time in 402 days, and the light of them across the marrow belt was the warm, steady amber of a thing that has all the time in the world, and it turned, slow and sure, to lead the Ossuar dead out of the graveyard that had been their tomb. 290 mountains fell into formation behind one dark human hull, and they began to move, and the human voice spoke one last time on the open channel, and this time, after 40,000 years, after 9 years of pretending, after an afternoon of unmaking, this time it spoke to us. To the handful of broken Vesh nodes drifting in our coffins of coral across the field of our own dead warsingers, it said, Chwara Vesh, you left them whole so the galaxy would see what you did. We left you alive for the same reason. Tell them what we are. And then the human ship and the woken dead went down into the dark together, and they were gone, and the marrow belt was silent, truly silent. For the first time in 40,000 years, no chorus singing victory over the bones, because there were no bones left to sing over, and there was no chorus left whole enough to sing. They left us alive to carry the warning, the same way we had left the Ossuar hulls whole to carry ours. The humans had taken our own sermon and preached it back to us, and the lesson of their sermon was not that silence is forever. Because the humans had just proven that silence was a thing that could be undone by anyone patient enough to undo it. I have spent the rest of my long life learning the humans, and the more I learn, the worse the warning becomes, and I will set down here what I have gathered, so that you do not have to gather it yourselves the way I did, in a coffin of coral, too late. The marrow belt was not the first graveyard the human reclaimer line had emptied. It was the 11th. I did not know this. The Vesh did not know this. We thought, when the dark ship came, that we were the center of something, that the humans had crossed the dark for us, that our holy place and our great victory were worth the attention of an enemy. We were not the center of anything. We were the 11th entry in a long, patient, unhurried ledger of debts, and there are entries after us, and the humans are working through the ledger the way a mender works, through a list of broken things, without anger, without haste, one graveyard at a time, in whatever order the patience falls. I have learned the names of 3 of the other 10. I set them down because a number is a thing that lands colder than a feeling, and the warning needs to land cold. The 4th graveyard the reclaimer line emptied belonged to a thing the lesser species called the Quiet Loom, a maker folk who had bound 100 worlds into a single weaving and then unmade a rival weaving, the Thren, and kept the Thren looms whole and dark as a monument, the way we kept the Ossuar. 8,000 years the Thren looms drifted silent. The humans came with a carrier hull and a hold full of menders, and they spent 6 years rethreading the dead looms one strand at a time, and when they were finished the Thren woke, and the quiet loom learned, in a single afternoon, that a weaving you cut is not a weaving you killed. I am told the quiet loom sent 4,000 hulls against one human carrier, and that the carrier never fired, and that 212 of the 4,000 came home. I am told the rest are still out there, dark, waiting to be read backward by whoever is patient enough. The 7th belonged to the Carrion Synod, a folk who fed on the fallen of others' wars, and who had once very long ago made a graveyard of their own, of a gentle star-herding people called the Lantern Drift. The humans found the Lantern Drift's burned arcs kept as trophies in the Synod's reliquary, fleet. They asked, on an open channel, in the trade tongue, whether the Synod would return the arcs. The Synod laughed, the way we laughed. The humans did not laugh back. They simply began with their own hands to mend the arcs, and the Lantern Drift woke after 9,000 years and asked the humans where they wanted to go, and the answer the Lantern Drift gave is not a thing I will set down, because some debts are paid in a coin a witness should not repeat. The Carrion Synod is a name now and not a folk. Their reliquary fleet drifts whole and dark in the place they kept their trophies, a monument no one built on purpose, waiting. The 9th I learned of last, and it is the one that should make you coldest, because it is the one that proves the humans do not need a grief as fresh as the Ossuars to act. It belonged to a power the old records call the Sealed Crown, a folk who did not even bother to make a graveyard of monuments, who simply rival people, a small quiet folk with no name left to history, and erased them so completely that not one hull, not one record, not one mourner remained, the cleanest unmaking in the long song of the loud voices. No wrecks kept whole, no witness spared, nothing. The sealed crown had believed, reasonably, that a people erased without trace cannot be reclaimed, because there is nothing left to read backward. They were the only loud voice in the galaxy ever to do it right, by the logic of the loud voices. The humans found them anyway, not the erased folk. Those were truly gone beyond even human patience. But the records of the erasure, buried in the sealed crown's own deep archives, kept by the crown the way a chorus keeps a sermon, because even a power that erases all trace cannot resist keeping, somewhere private, the proof of what it did. The humans read those records. They could not reclaim the dead. There were no dead left to reclaim. So they did the only thing left to do with a debt whose creditor no longer exists. They made the sealed crown the monument. They left the crown's worlds whole and dark and silent, every city standing, every archive intact, every citizen gone in a single patient afternoon, and they spared a handful to carry the warning. And the warning the spared ones carry is that there is no clean way to make a graveyard, that even the perfect erasure leaves the one record the killer keeps for himself, and that the humans will find that record, and that the absence of a creditor does not cancel the debt, it only changes who collects. I tell you these so you understand that the marrow belt was not special. We were not chosen. We were not even early. We were the 11th entry in a ledger, and the ledger is long, and the humans are working through it without anger and without haste, and there is nothing in the order of it but patience in the falling of the work. There is a thing the loud voices do, all of them, every chorus and empire and armada that has ever ruled the dark. When they win, they leave the monument. The wreck kept whole, the crew left dead inside, the witness spared to carry the lesson. They do it because it works, because a graveyard left as a sermon frightens the next folk into kneeling, and fear is cheaper than a second war. The Vesh did it. The Osuar, I have learned, did it before us, to the people they beat before we beat them. The loud voices have been building these monuments since the first one of them was loud, and the galaxy is full of them. 100,000 graveyards, 100,000 silenced peoples kept whole and dead as warnings, and everyone who passes them learns the same lesson and kneels and the cycle turns. The humans learned a different lesson from the graveyards. This is the whole of it. This is the thing I most need you to hear. Every loud voice that ever passed a monument read it as it was meant to be read. Do not defy the strong, see what they did, kneel. The humans passed the same monuments and read them backward. They saw a wreck kept whole and thought, the crew might still be in there. They saw people silenced and thought, silence is not the same as death. Someone shut them up. Someone could open them again. They saw a vow scratched into a dying lattice and thought, that is a promise. And a promise is a thing that can be kept. The loud voices built the monuments to be permanent. The humans looked at the monuments and saw, in every single one, a repair waiting to be made. That is what they are. A people who pass the graveyards of the galaxy and see not warnings but work orders. A people patient enough to read the last words of the murdered and methodical enough to make them true, one graveyard at a time, without anger, without glory, taking nothing, building nothing, asking only, when the dead are awake and accounted for, where do you want to go? They have no empire. I have looked. 11 graveyards emptied, and the humans hold not one of them. They wake the dead and hand them their own future and move on. They do not rule the peoples they reclaim. The Osuar are not human vassals. They are the Osuar, mourning their own dead world, going wherever the grief takes them, owing the humans nothing but the fact of being awake. The humans do not even ask to be remembered. The only thing they asked, at the marrow belt, of the only ones they left alive, was that we tell the galaxy what they are, and even that, I have come to understand, was not for the humans' glory. It was for the next loud voice. It was a warning sent ahead, in the mouth of a witness, so that the next chorus, eyeing a graveyard to build, might hear, before it strikes, what waits in the long quiet of the bones. This is the category error, and it is not the one we thought. We thought the error was the ship, too big, too fast, too sealed, not in any archive. But the ship was only the carrier of the error. The true error, the one that broke the Vesh and will break whoever comes after us, is this. Every loud voice in the galaxy is playing a game in which the prize is to be the last one singing over the graveyard. The humans are not playing that game. They are emptying the graveyards. They want the singing to stop. And a people who do not want to win cannot be beaten, because there is nothing you can take from them and nothing you can offer them and nothing you can threaten them with, since they have already looked at the worst thing the loud voices do and decided, patiently, to spend forever undoing it. You cannot frighten a mender with the size of the thing that needs mending. You cannot bribe a mender by offering to let him be the next loud voice. He has heard what loud does. You cannot outlast a mender because patience is the one resource the loud voices spent and the humans saved. We had 40,000 years of certainty. They had 9 years of attention, and the 9 years beat the 40,000 because certainty is a thing that ends the moment is wrong, and attention is a thing that only deepens. I have told this to 19 choruses. Some of them mocked me, the way we mocked the humans, and I did not argue, because I know now that the mockery is the door, and a people who will let you mock them for 9 years are a people you should already be running from. Some of them believed me and asked what could be done, and I had no answer, because there is no defense in any song against a thing that wants only to repair what you tried to destroy. The only counsel I have ever been able to give is the counsel a witness gives, which is no counsel at all. Do not make the graveyards. That is the whole of it. Do not silence the quiet voice. Do not build the monument. Do not leave the wreck whole, and the crew dead, and the witness alive. Because somewhere in the long dark there is a patient people reading every monument backward, and they are coming, one work order at a time, and the bones you left as a sermon are the first thing they will open.